Treasurer Joe Hockey this budget night. Treasurer, thanks for your time tonight.
Good to be with you, David.
Let me start by quoting you from your first budget speech this time last year. You said, "Doing nothing is not an option. The time to fix the budget is now." And yet the deficit is more than twice what you thought it would be a year ago. Spending over the forward estimates is higher than any time during the Howard government. Is the budget crisis really over?
Well, no, we've still got work to do in relation to budget repair, but we're on the right track, David. In the last 12 months alone, we've lost nearly $52 billion of revenue because we've had a massive fall in the iron ore price, and we've faced the biggest fall in the terms of trade in the last 50 years. Now, we've managed all of that. The Australian economy is still one of the fastest growing developed economies in the world. We've been able to cope with a whole range of challenges, and we've come through. And what we're seeing is the budget is on a credible trajectory back to surplus, and the same trajectory as I announced at the end of last year.
When you say the $52 billion revenue write-down, we should stress this is forecast revenue that's not going to be there. Actual revenue is higher year on year, and spending as a proportion of the economy is actually still, this year and next year, 25.9% of GDP. We still have a spending problem, don't we?
Yeah, it's still too high, and that's why we're getting it down. As you can see from our forecasts in the budget, we're bringing it down each and every year. In fact, David, if you look closely at the actual
higher than any time under the Howard government, though.
Well, geez, I wish I had the revenue of the Howard government. I wish I had those.
I'm talking about the spending, though. The spending rate is still higher than any time under the Howard government.
Well, and it's too high. This is what we inherited. We inherited a budget that every day the government had to borrow over $130 million just to pay the bills. Now, we've got it down to $96 million. There's still a lot of work to do, David. There's no doubt about that. And we are determined to do that work, but at the same time, we want to see the Australian economy grow. And importantly, we want Australians to invest their own money. So you're not seeing handouts out of this government. What you're seeing is us giving, particularly Australian small businesses, back more of their own money so that they can go out and have a go and invest.
I want to get to that, but what do you say to the criticism already tonight that you've gone soft on spending cuts and instead you're allowing bracket creep to help you achieve modest improvement in the budget bottom line over the coming years?
Well, if the Labor Party's worried about us spending too much money, then they can back $30 billion of savings and spending reductions that we have sitting in the Senate. And in fact, David, they could back $5 billion of their own promised reductions in spending, which they have been opposing ever since they went into opposition. So yes, there's more work to be done, but I expect all of the critics out there to come and give us a hand to reduce government expenditure.
All right, and what about bracket creep? Because you did say just hours ago in a press conference that this is a disincentive to work, it's going to hurt economic growth, and yet you're not doing anything about it over the next 4 years.
Well, we have it built into our medium-term plan to do something about it, because we recognise that the only way you can get the budget back to balance is to reduce government expenditure over time. And importantly, we are saying that it is unacceptable to have Australians drift into those higher tax brackets, because ultimately that slows down economic growth and it ends up being a downward spiral for the economy. So you have to give back tax cuts, but we can't give tax cuts back until we have further reductions in expenditure, and we can only have further reductions in expenditure if we can get some of the key initiatives through the Senate, which I'm sure we will be able to do.
Let me ask you this, though, before we get to small business. Why is it okay to let you and me and all average workers pay higher and higher tax rates through bracket creep, but not okay to do something about superannuation taxes on the very wealthy? I mean, your own Treasury Secretary has said this is something we should look at. You yourself, only a month or so ago, were open to looking at this.
Well, we are endeavouring to give people stability and certainty in relation to superannuation. As the Governor of the Reserve Bank identified only recently, a lot of self-funded retirees and people that rely on their savings are over time going to have lower returns because interest rates are very low. So we're recognising that. What we want to do is give them stability and certainty. Labor wants to introduce a new tax on superannuation. If they do that, that's going to hurt households that rely on their superannuation to live on and continue with their lifestyle.
With respect, Treasurer, you said in March that it is extraordinary that someone with $12 million in super pays no tax.
Yeah. And what we've done since then is have a look at how many people are there in that position. There is literally, there is probably a dozen Australians that under Labor's laws actually piled money into superannuation to get that sort of money. Well, if you're going to change the laws to have any impact on revenue, it has to affect a lot of people. Hundreds of thousands of people, David, and we do not want to hit Australians with superannuation at a time when they're getting lower returns for their money in the bank. We want to have a system that is stable and certain, and that's why I said tonight there'll be no new taxes on superannuation under this government.
Now tell me about small business, a big shot in the arm you're trying to give them tonight. Clarify for me who is a small business that will be able to take advantage of this instant asset write-off in particular, and I'm assuming the same rules applies to the sorts of assets they can buy. Well,
it's any business with a turnover of less than $2 million a year. This covers 96% of all businesses in Australia. Importantly, from 7:30 p.m. tonight, any assets they buy under $20,000 they can instantly write off on their tax, and that is a huge incentive for people to go out and have a go, invest money, buy the plant and equipment, buy the tables and chairs for a coffee shop, buy new kitchen equipment, buy computers. We want Australians to go out and have a go and invest, because the big drivers of growth and the big drivers of jobs into the future are going to be Australia's small businesses.
And a final question, how will you judge the success of this? Is it going to be employment levels, economic growth levels? How do we know whether this has worked?
Well, fundamentally, every budget needs to be the next step in an economic plan. Everything we are doing is part of our plan, which we've considered carefully and consulted widely on. This is one further step to build a stronger and more prosperous economy, David. We're on track. Economic growth is going to increase. We can see the unemployment rate levelling off at 6.5 and coming back down. And most importantly, our offshore trading partners are looking to improve their own economic growth. So we're going to see good growth in exports as well.
Treasurer Joe Hockey, thank you very much for joining us this budget night.
Thanks very much. Thanks, David.